Can everyone hear me? If I were to have this audience as my measure of when we will go digital as a nation, and therefore what impact it would have on big brands, I and Monica would have walked out of here now. But that's not the story, and I'm going to make 4 points like Vikram did. India will have its own avatar of the digital world. The math is weird but obvious. Television advertising has plenty more ahead, not unlike digital. And India's e-highway will wiggle into our lives exactly like the national highway system has. It'll take 20 years. So let me start by first saying that like we consume cement in India like no other country does in the world. Per capita, we consume more cement than any other country in the world. The way STD phones, STD booths became cellular telephony, became the cheapest cellular telephony in the world, with 941 million cellular telephony users as of last week. Actual users in India as per TRAI. The way we've done it is very different from the way the rest of the world has adopted to each of these elements. And our adoption of the digital world will similarly be different. The math, I'm just going to add to what Monica said. We have 650 channels, of which 300 are spewing 4 to 5 hours of fresh content every day. We have therefore, multiply that by 12 minutes, and we have a crazy amount of advertising available, much bigger than anywhere else in the world. Compare that with the point that Monica made about 190 minutes of Indians' daytime or 24-hour time is spent on television, in comparison with the Americans that in their digital world spend 320 minutes of time on television even today. Then you compare that with the fact that India has not hit that tipping point where spending on consumer products becomes inelastic, or sorry, becomes completely elastic. That's worldwide considered $1,800 per capita. We are about 4 years away from that. At which time the consumption of consumer products will become significantly more in rural India than in urban India. And today we have about 800 million people in rural India. My sense is that number will remain stagnant at about 800 million, and the rest of what India is growing will become urban. But by 2020, we're not going to be 1.6 billion people, and therefore we'll have more people in rural India watching television as opposed to going digital. Finally, remember, television and the entire media and entertainment industry today contributes to less than 1% of GDP in comparison to 3 to 4% in the developed world. But even if I were to compare us to a China or a Pakistan, where it's a little over 1.5%, or a Brazil which is closer to 2%, we've got a long way to go in just achieving the numbers for traditional media. Television has plenty more in terms of advertising potential. Digitization will move 650 channels to over 1,000 channels. Suddenly, on a digital platform, digitized platform, advertising to micro markets, which means what I advertise in Asansol will be very different from what I advertise in Tippegundanhalli. 1 billion people watching television by 2020 will have to be compared with about 600 million people, and I'm exaggerating here, but I'm giving the benefit of doubt to Vikram and Punita, at about 600 million people will be on digital platforms by 2020. What we don't understand is there are 2 more waves of value creation television will provide. One is when it starts to reach rural markets, it will start to create new ways of educating those rural markets and that in itself will create a huge advertising opportunity in addition to being able to devise new ways to reach those rural markets. Finally, you've seen what it has taken to create our highways. We've all seen that. The NHRAI was created in the first part of Vajpayee's first regime, and we're 14 years after that today, or 16 years after that today, and we're nowhere close to finishing creating our national highway. The good news is Modi wants to create the national e-highway, and I'm certain he has significantly more impetus and investment potential to do that. But at the end of the day, we are a democracy of our own reckoning, and in that democracy, decisions between the center and the state, decisions on how our e-highway will come about, will stall our ability to get to those rural markets and provide the necessary bandwidth, if you will, to really finish creating the total platform required to make this happen. Therefore, I conclude that India will have its own avatar of digital television. The math, because of 700 million or 800 million people living in rural India, will tilt comprehensively toward television overruling digital, at least in the foreseeable future. Television advertising having plenty more ahead, and our e-highway not coming about in time. Thank you.
So Punita, it's over to you to finally close this.
Thank you. I think I'm going to do this in two segments. One is I just have a couple of points to make against what Shailesh spoke about, and then I want to talk about our estimates as Google on what's going to happen. So you talked about 650 channels, 3 to 4 hours of fresh content on video online. I think about every minute there is about 365 days of content that's actually loaded. So if you're thinking of content is a differentiator, then I think online has more content compared to what you'll ever be able to do on television in terms of fresh content. The second thing is, we are talking about the time spent on TV, the time we do, at malls and stuff like that. I wonder how many of you are watching TV without a mobile phone in your hand or without a desktop in front of you. I also do not know how many people are at malls today without, for example, using a mobile phone or Facebook in terms of posting everything that you actually come across and stuff like that. The third point we're making about is rural India. I mean, we're going to get to reaching rural India through television by 2020. There are about, I think about 50–60% of rural India already with a mobile phone. Then there are more TV homes in the country today. So I think we should stop looking at, digital as all about the desktop. It's about the mobile phone, because that also is going to get you digital. You talked about Modi, sir. I do not know about the highway, but Modi definitely wants India online. That, for example, is a part of his long-term plan and all the conversations that he's having with publishers, with Google and Facebook. And the Asansol versus the other market example you got, sir, all I can tell you is that I can take two people here and I can target two different messages to them online instead of having to actually segregate by market. So just to tell you that everything that you spoke about, I think digital does it better and does it a lot more better. And therefore, all I can tell you is please wake up and smell the coffee, and please stop dreaming the dreams that you're currently having. Okay, so quickly, let me just look at the title. I think it just said digital digital is going to be larger than television before 2020, and we anticipate it happening by 2018, 2019. And I'm going to give you 5 reasons why it's going to happen, and I've actually clubbed them into the 4 W's and the 1 H, which is the what, why, when, where, and the how, okay? So let's look at the first question, which is what. We're talking big brands, and that team seems to believe that the big brands of tomorrow are going to be the Unilever and the Procter & Gamble of the world. Again, wake up. 10 years back, 60% of ad spends were on FMCGs. Today, it's 30% of television advertising by FMCGs, and there are lots of newer categories that have come that are going to be the big brands of tomorrow. If I had to predict tomorrow, e-com would be the biggest category in India, and that would include the Amazon and the Flipkarts. Travel would be the biggest category in India. That would include the Make My Trips of the world. And you look at services, I think financial, auto, everything are going to be bigger than CPGs. And therefore, for all these brands, digital is not a medium, it's business. Because on digital, they sell, they transact, they actually end up getting the consumer to actually buy. So first of all, for big brands of tomorrow, it is going to be the e-com, it's going to be travel, it's going to be finance, and they, for example, are definitely going to be on digital. They are on digital today, and they're only going to get heavier on digital tomorrow. Okay, let's look at why, for example, people are going to be on digital and brands are going to be on digital. And I call it the one word reach. And if there, I know there are quite a few agency people here. All decisions in media get taken by reach, right? How many people you're reaching, in terms of consumers and all of it. And there are various kinds of reach that happen. The first is mass reach. Again, I do not know where they're getting the information from, but considering it's coming from Google, you can be rest assured that this information is probably, more truer than the information that the offline people have. There are about 200 million consumers in India today. Every month, there are 6 million people who are coming online, about 5 to 6 million online, which means every year we are adding something like 75 to 100 million consumers online in India. In the next 3 to 4 years, it's going to cross 500, 600 million, and it's going to be as large, if not larger, than television. So anyone who believes that television is going to become larger than digital, please look at everything that's being printed and written about. Digital is going to become as large as television in the near future. The second thing is relevant reach, and we were talking a lot about rural. I wonder how much of the $7 billion ad industry today is targeting rural. I mean, 5%, 10%? Please take it, sir. You're welcome to keep the 5, 10% on television, because we will take the balance on digital. Because the consuming class is going to be in urban, and that is where, for example, advertisers are going to be targeting. Of the 1.2 billion people we have in the country today, about 320 million is the relevant consuming class that advertisers target, and that 300 million are going to be online by the end of 2015. Second reason. Third is accountable reach, right? I mean, we were talking about ROIs and stuff like that. In advertising on television, I do not know how many have heard, you have heard this phrase, I do not know which part of my advertising is wasted. I know 50% works, 50% doesn't work. In digital, 100% of it works. Because you know what is happening to every rupee that you're spending, and therefore, we are talking about the why and we're talking about the reach. I think digital does it a lot more better than television. Now, let's then look at the when it's going to happen, and I'll tell you the reason I think it's going to be happening by 2018, 2019. You look at ad spends on television over the last 20 years. So far, every 6 years, television has doubled its ad spends, okay? So in 2008, for example, if it was about $1.5 billion, about 2014, it's become about $3 billion. All of us know that the ad spends on television is actually slowing down today, and the rate at which they are growing is slowing down. By 2020, television is likely to be a $5.5 billion business. Let's look at what's happening on digital. $850 million is what's getting spent today, and digital is doubling every 18 months, which means in the next 50 odd months, digital is going to be bigger than a $5 billion business, right? So the fact of it is it's all happening, and even the mathematics proves that it's going to be happening. The next is where is the proof points? Let's look at markets. In UK, digital is 35% of ad spends. Australia, digital crossed television about 8 months before. You look at time spent, for example, in India, again, to the consuming class, 30% of their time is being spent on digital. And you look at the last one, which is the how, I think agencies are going to make it happen, because agencies make more money by getting clients to spend on digital in terms of revenues compared to being offline. Martin Sorrell, I mean, if you've noticed his interview about a day back, actually said he's going to ensure the WPP is going to be 41% of revenues coming from digital, right? The next thing is advertisers are going to ensure that, because advertisers are where the consuming class is, and the consuming class is on digital. And last but not the least, telco operators. All of you have seen the telco operators P&L and their balance sheets, for example, 2 years before when they focused on voice, and now when they've increased the cost on voice and are focusing on data. Data is about getting consumers online, and the telco operators are going to ensure that they put data plans that are going to get things online. So Shailesh and Monica, all I have to tell you again is wake up, smell the coffee, and stop dreaming.